Let's continue our presentation about the Bigfoot research in Russia and the former Soviet Union. One of the most interesting and relatively recent encounters took place in November of 1992. Anatoly Dobrenko, who lives in the village of Samaryadovo in the Dmitrov district in the Moscow region, works in a local children's sanatorium. And he was walking his dog near the sanatorium one day. Suddenly the dog bristled and snarled angrily. Anatoly then saw a two-legged hairy monster about 100 meters away. The creature was moving away towards the forest. Now the man says that he could make out rusty-colored matted hair on the creature's back from the distance. When Dobrenko's son Igor, an army captain, learned about the encounter, he visited the area of the sighting, accompanied by some employees from the sanatorium. Igor found some well-preserved prints of huge bare feet in the mud that were nearly 50 centimeters long and 15 centimeters wide in its broadest part. The participants treated those prints like material evidence, covering them for better preservation. Later, Igor reported his findings to a newspaper, and the newspaper arranged a thorough examination of the location of the sighting. Local dwellers were interviewed, some of whom have seen signs of the unusual guest's presence before. The search party discovered the place where the creature had spent at least one night. It was the attic of an abandoned summer cottage. No one, but two creatures seemed to have been there. Nobody came to that cottage. The second set of tracks evidently belonged to a female. The feet were smaller. The investigation of that case has not officially ended, but I don't have any further information about it. There have been interesting sightings in the Arkhangelsk region as well. In the summer of 1989, Professor of Medicine Dr. Aleutsky flew to the local Taiga dense forest to gather some herbs. He was on the bank of a river when a bear cub came up to him and yelped. The professor heard the cub's mothers roaring nearby. Dr. Aleutsky had a knife with him, but felt that it would be a poor defense against the angry beast. The doctor hastily abandoned his basket full of mushrooms and raced back to his boat. Suddenly he heard a blood-chilling scream from behind. Turning his head, the doctor saw a gorilla-like creature holding the bear in its hands. The creature was 2.5 meters tall, its body covered with thick brown fur. It was a female, and its large teeth were bared. Holding the bear by its hind legs, the creature tore the animal in two pieces without any visible effort. The whole episode lasted just a few seconds. Dr. Aleutsky told this bizarre story to two of his companions. They decided it would be wisest to forget the whole story and not tell anybody about it. Only after some time had passed did they decide to report the story. Now, luckily the eyewitnesses had a sound biological background, but as more time passed, Dr. Aleutsky couldn't help but begin to doubt the existence of the creature he had sighted. But another sighting took place on January 24, 1992 in the village of Sosnino, 6 kilometers from the ancient Russian town of Kargopol. Two creatures covered with long grizzly hair entered the barrack of an army unit which was engaged in the road construction. One creature was enormously tall, about 2.5 meters. The other was actually half the size. Circumstantial evidence suggests that the larger one was a female, and the other one was its child. The baby jumped onto the soldier's night table while its mother stopped by the stove, waved its long arms, and gave a series of short cries in a very low voice. Then the strangers, who encountered neither understanding nor approval, from the soldiers ran away and hid in the forest. During this incident, a dozen people cited the strange creatures. More soldiers had seen the creatures in a short time before, in the morning, evening, and at night, but they could not believe their eyes. After the incident, some soldiers felt ill and went to consult the unit's doctor. One witness could not utter a word. His speech returned several days later. The strangers left behind some tufts of hair and a drop of coagulated blood and large footprints. The footprints were 15 centimeters long, 15 centimeters wide, and 20 centimeters deep. The snow was knee deep for humans. No records of the Russian studies of Bigfoot will be complete without mentioning Mikhail Sergeyevich Yeltsin. This is no relation to the former president of Russia. Back in the early 1980s, his underground samizdat report circulated in the USSR among the researchers of the anomalous phenomena or the paranormal phenomena. Yeltsin was a journalist and the deputy science chief of the Gisar 82 expedition. This expedition, which has studied the snowman phenomena since 1974, was organized with the help of the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper. And since 1981, the Gisar expedition has explored the Pamir Mountains, and there were reports of its findings in the newspaper. Even Moscow News published a large article about the snowman, titled Snowman in the Mountains of Tajikistan, in November of 1981. I already mentioned Marina Popovich and her descriptions of what had happened. Now, the head of the Gisar expedition, Igor Tsatel, revealed the latest information his explorer had obtained. Yet another Soviet scientist, Professor Porshnev, we already know, produced a monograph about it. Now, that mentioned findings. There were many people in the old USSR who were quite interested in that subject. Major publications such as Technika Молодежи in 1966, 69, and 78, and Nauka и Religia in 64 and 68, as well as many newspapers and magazines, featured articles about the snowman. Many eyewitnesses said that near the areas where this ape-like, you can call it that, creatures were sighted, strange giant footprints 50 to 60 centimeters were often found. Yeltsin, in his account of the Gisar 83 expedition, mentions that other anomalous or paranormal phenomena, such as UFOs and biophysical phenomena, were also detected in the Pamir Mountains. And I recall UFO reports in the booklets that I received from the Soviet Union at the time, before its disintegration and afterwards, that mentioned UFO reports from the area. It's a fascinating territory to visit, and there are quite interesting phenomena all around. In 1994, my colleagues from the Yaroslavl UFO group took part in the Gisar 84 expedition. One of them was Yuri Alexandrovich Smirnov, who passed away years ago. He had a document basically from the Leningrad Geographic Society of the USSR, a mandate to study the phenomenon. In the Pamir Mountains, the Yaroslav researchers met with Igor Tsatel, and he summarized for them his experiences and knowledge of the snowman. In his view, the snowman is an objective reality. Tsatel has studied the creature for many years. He pointed out that the ape-like creatures study humans just as we studied them. The snowman, according to Tsatel, possesses a biological aura, biofield as they call it. It feeds on berries. Sometimes it does attack sheep, but it eats only their liver. The snowman does not eat much relative to its massive size, however. As a result, as a rule, the snowman leaves no traces of its death. In some cases, people have attempted to shoot the creature. These individuals reportedly died afterwards under mysterious circumstances. It is very difficult to catch a glimpse of this elusive hominoid. Bigfoot hates bright lights because it is a nocturnal creature. It can hide under any stone, it sees very well at night, and it is very careful. Human beings can always sense when the ape-like creatures look at them. Sometimes Bigfoot throws pebbles at humans as its way of trying to be funny. However, should big stones be tossed, one had better leave immediately. As a rule, rocks or stones tossed by Bigfoot do not hit humans. It is, generally aims rocks at other nearby targets, such as campfires. No one has ever been confronted, according to Tatzel, by aggressive snowmen. Tatzel believes that Bigfoot knows all there is to know about humans. There have been reported cases of Bigfoot helping people who were in danger, and sometimes it warns humans of impending dangers. In 1982, a group of tourists camped at the Bolshoi Igizak ravine in the Tajik USSR at the time, in Tajikistan, and they were frightened away when stones began hitting their campfire. Seconds later, a landslide buried their camp, but the tourists managed to escape unharmed. Yeltsin resided in Bulgaria, as far as I know, although some have reported him since to be in Moscow. The current whereabouts of Tatzel are not known, and I'm not sure if they're alive. I do understand that he has priceless archive of research papers, sketches, maps, and his findings about Bigfoot. At that time, there were no funds to study Bigfoot, and there are no more Gisar expeditions or any similar expeditions into Altai Pamir Mountains. It may change because there are more researchers interested in the phenomena. Maya Bykova, whom I mentioned before, she passed away in 1996. The St. Petersburg researchers remain the most active today, but again, there is a lack of funds to study this very interesting phenomenon. There was another person who dedicated many years of his life to the research of the hominids, and he was Sergei Klumov, a senior scientist at the Severtsov Institute of Problems of Ecology and Evolution at the Russian Academy of Sciences. He had collected a large body of materials regarding snowmen, but he is virtually unknown in the West. Zhana Iosifovna Kaufman, or Marie-Jeanne Kaufman, was born in 1919. She was a surgeon, mountain climber, a Soviet army captain. At one time, she was a prisoner of the Soviet concentration camps. She studied cryptozoology, and she led a number of expeditions. Actually, she was involved in the Pamir expedition in 1958, and she had conducted a number of expeditions to the North Caucasus areas. In 1987, she founded the Russian Society of Cryptozoology, and for many years she was its president or chairman. She was well known about her articles, scientific and popular articles about the snowman phenomenon. She was the active member of the Russian Geographic Society, and her contributions are very important. I have written much about the strange giants of the Caucasus Mountains and the mysterious giant underwater hominoids of Siberia. I mentioned it in the Russia's USO Secrets and my presentations. The Caucasus area is not an easy place to get to because there's warfare and sometimes terrorism. As for Siberia, I have not received any reports from my colleagues for some years. As you know, Russia is a changing country, and information is not easy to get out of Russia sometimes. What we do hope that the research for the Bigfoot, Yeti, Snowman, Sasquatch, and other names that the creature has, we hope that the research is not forgotten. Interesting. I remember an interesting article that appeared in the United Kingdom in 1997 in the Daily Telegraph newspaper about the 1997 conference that took place in the State Darwin Museum in Moscow. It was titled the International Conference on the Relict Hominoid, and the participants included Dmitry Donskoy, who was 87 at the time, a professor of biomechanics at the Central Institute of Physical Culture. He was a specialist in the science of movement, and an American professor of anthropology for the Washington State University, Grover Krantz. That conference was timed to coincide with the 30th anniversary of the American anthropologist Roger Patterson's 1967 footage of what he claimed to be Yeti, which was shot in Northern California. The audience in Moscow consisted of mostly anthropologists, geologists, and other scientists at the conference. In 2009, Dr. Sapunov mentioned that the creature we know as snowman exists and is sighted in the Kuzbas, in the Altaisk region, and Khakassia. He believes that the population may be as big as 200 species. And this is the number of the population that allows the creature to reproduce itself and not disappear. As for the question why such a giant family has not been found or discovered henceforth, the scientists mentioned that the creatures have very acute ability to feel danger and evade human beings. Now, in the Kemerov region of Russia, the Yeti has become quite well known, and there is a monument in mountainous Shoria to the snowman, and people are very much interested to sell souvenirs to the tourists. But you see, the local population, unlike the scientists, claim to have encountered this strange creature quite often. There were other and still are researchers in Russia. I should mention Vadim Makarov, Mikhail Trachtengertz, Igor Burtsev, and Dmitry Bayanov, among others. In conclusion, I want to mention that in Central Asia, of course, the snowman known as Almaz has been sighted before. What's interesting that in the Tsagaan Board Uul area, there is such interesting species as the gobi bear, Mazalai, also a relic animal, which some claim to be the prototype of the Almaz, or the hairy people of the Central Asia. No one really knows much about this unique brown bear that lives in the desert. The Mongols mentioned that in the desert areas of the Tsagaan Bogdo there are creatures that are bipedal, hairy, and their sizes from 1.5 meters to larger size. The first travelers who had observed such Almaz creature, or the gobi bear, was Murzaev and his friend, scientist in the botany field Yunatov, in 1943. And they describe this creature as being of small size, less than the regular bear, forest brown bear, and the fur is quite dark brown color. This creature is very rapid and very careful. The legends from the area state that the Gobi bear can understand human speech, that it lives in the rocks that are almost impossible to climb upon, to reach, that this creature has very interesting habitats, and that it doesn't want to be seen by human beings and it bipedal, which I mentioned. The superstitious nomads describe the brown bear as such, that the Gobi bears are some kind of hairy creatures, that they can speak and they live in the caves where it is rare that somebody can see them. And that's where the Gobi legends about the Almas, hairy people, came about. I have more information that I will talk about in the future, but I didn't want to present to my audience at least some information about this very interesting and still uncovered phenomenon of the Bigfoot, snowman, снежный человек, Yeti, Sasquatch, you name it. I have stories to tell you from the areas of the Caucasus Mountains and a few other areas of the former Soviet Union, and I hope to do it in the future. Thank you.